Hello, everyone, and welcome to this panel discussion on innovation and governance. Innovation should meet governance because the world is experiencing significant challenges. And I think in many areas we're making steps forward, but governance is moving much slower than other areas. So that is why we are proposing this discussion in the Global Summit, because policy is an important component of a global system that could make things work better. We have a wonderful list of panelists today, and it's a great pleasure for me to be the moderator of this session. My name is Stefan Chibian. I come from the Făgăraș Research Institute in Romania, in a small town in southern Transylvania. And my background is in international development and international relations. I'm particularly very much interested in how we can understand each other across different cultures. And when it comes to development, I'm interested in how donors and in general, people who try to support development in various parts of the world could better connect to local realities, because development belongs to those people who live in local communities, and any development policy should connect and build on what local communities are and what their dreams for their future are as well. So after this short introduction of myself, I would like to continue to introduce the panelists that we have today. It is a really great pleasure to have with us several amazing speakers and people who have been involved in various sectors and have really amazing experiences. And I'm very much looking forward to engaging in this discussion together with them. I will start the introductions with Ambassador Toko Majokweni, who is a renowned and humble innovator and now a South African ambassador. She has dedicated her life to the pursuit of justice. She became Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions in 1996 when she was the first African female to be appointed to this position. She was at the forefront of setting up sexual offenses courts, the institutionalization of prosecutor-led investigations in cases of gender-based violence and violence against children, as well as the coordination of services for an efficient and responsive criminal justice system. She developed the Tutuzela Care Center model as an integrated multidisciplinary model which is victim-centered with prosecutor-guided investigations. And she has won numerous prestigious awards for her work in this field. I'm really glad that we have with us an ambassador and a person with so much experience in the current governance setup. And I'm sure Toko's insights will be extremely important in our discussion. The next person on the panel is Wiki Walker, who comes from Aotearoa, which is New Zealand. And Wiki comes from the Nga'itine tribe, and she is playing an important role in continuing in supporting and developing her own community. And I think it's so amazing to have with us a person who has experiences in a group of people that is experiencing today governance mechanisms and systems also seeing the many gaps that these systems have. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing Wiki's insights and experiences with governance mechanisms, and ideally also insights for how these mechanisms could cater more for the needs of communities such as hers. Moving forward, we have with us Bert Ola Bergstrand. Berg Ola is a system entrepreneur and global action facilitator, driving initiatives focusing on learning society models and amplifying the human potential through crowds and thereby solving global challenges. He is an initiator, founder, and co-founder of a number of international platforms and networks in the field of crowd impact economy. For example, Social Capital Forum, Living Bridges Planet, Impact Journey, SoCap Network, Social Entrepreneurs Club, and others. He is also working together with the Trondheim municipality and the Norwegian University of Sciences and Technology. Thereafter, we also have with us Regi Ludke, who is an Edmund Hillary Global Impact Fellow and also working with various other initiatives, among with Mohua Village and Earth Equity. Regi grew up in the gratitude towards nature. Since then, he's been using his Earth Equity, a nonprofit he is starting with Maori leaders within the environmental personhood movement. So again, a perspective coming from let's say, spaces and experiences that show that there are gaps in how governance works today, and that we need governance systems that actually pay attention, build upon the perspectives, cultures, visions of multiple communities around the world. A bit later today, we will have with us Jamin Patel, and he is a person who will be sharing with us his perspectives on Global Summit themes. So just a few words about him. After writing 7 books and having the honor and privilege of speaking around the world and reaching folks across 5 continents, Jamin has found his true passion in energizing large groups of students and industry professionals with dynamic, engaging, and educational presentations, and sharing his message with those who are eager to wake up every day to find more success in college, career, and beyond. So throughout his work, he inspired thousands of students and professionals, we will have the chance to connect with him later today. So as you know, and as I also mentioned at the beginning, the topic of today's panel is governance, and a more specific take on that, innovation in governance. We throughout the last days in the Global Summit, we touched upon extremely important topics for the world we live in today, and these topics relate to inequalities, relate to technology, relate to the environment, and to various communities around the globe that have different kinds of experiences with how the world works. So the purpose of this discussion is to reflect on these discussions that we've been having in the Global Summit up to date, and to basically think about how we could imagine governance systems that transcend the limitations that we see today in the systems that we experience. So coming from a technology side, coming from communities side, coming from perspectives on nature that are not at the core of how governance systems work at the moment. The hope is to bring on the table inspiration, insights, experiences that can help us to do maybe 2 things. To see the gaps or the limitations of current governance mechanisms, because these mechanisms are giving us these troubling experiences that we have today, but also reflect on how change is possible at a governance level. And this is not an easy topic. This is not an easy topic. We have been discussing about innovation in technology for quite a while now, and we can see what innovation in technology is bringing. It's bringing a new world, basically, altogether. In governance, we are at the other end of the spectrum. We do not discuss about innovation. We are even having a difficult time understanding innovation that happens in other fields, like in technology, for example. So governance in general is an extremely how should I call it, stuck area system. And I think we need such discussions. We need such engagements that build on the experiences we have from around the world and from various topics, to be able to identify where can we start, where can we bring in innovation, through which channels, through which approaches can we bring innovation in governance. So so these were just a few words to kickstart this discussion, and I will now pass the floor to the panelists, and we will start with Regi. Please, you have the floor.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, maybe I can just give a brief background on kind of how I ended up doing the work that I'm doing now. So I started off more in the startup side of things, and basically when we were deciding how to do compensation for employees, it was really important to us that the employees got the value that they were providing. So rather than having the value they got reflected in how good of a negotiator they were. So it was this concept of value in equals value out. And that ended up working pretty well. So we ended up growing to around 300 employees. I think in part because of that. So then when I went to New Zealand and I learned about the Wanganui River getting personhood, basically it was having a conversation with somebody who was measuring the water quality of rivers, and he was trying to figure out, how do I do my cap table in a more innovative way, and the idea kind of like came all at once that, well, if the river owns itself, then the river could own other assets too. And even though the river can't negotiate for those assets, it doesn't mean that the river and the mountain and the forests aren't providing assets. So if they're providing that value, then we could reflect that value. And if they can own themselves, they could own stock too. And then as an early stockholder, they could also be, a lot of times you would give an early stockholder and significant stockholder a board seat. So that's kind of like where the idea for Earth Equity came from, was, what would it look like for a river to be a shareholder and a board member of a company, and for nature in general to, to be represented and come into more reciprocal relationship with nature. So since that point, I've been connecting with Maori leaders to put this together, and yeah, and rolling that out now with yeah, maybe with some things that we can talk about further, but that's a little background on me.
Thank you so much, Regi, for this short intervention, and looking forward to hearing your further perspectives on how governance mechanisms at the moment and how governance systems react to this. So what is your experience with trying to establish this legal personality for a river, for a course of water? Yes, may I just ask what is your experience in this regard? This is definitely something that pushes for many legal systems the borders of legal personhood. So it would be really interesting to learn more about your experience with that up to date.
Yeah, do you want me to talk about that a little bit right now?
It would be excellent, please. Yes, if it's possible, it would be excellent.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess the first thing I should say is, like, I wasn't involved in the Wanganui River getting personhood. That was a Maori-led movement. What we're trying to do is well, a few different things. But one of the pieces is to say, okay, to date, at least in New Zealand, it's been through settlement processes that the river and what used to be a national park and soon a mountain will be achieving legal personhood status. But what if, and you need essentially Crown or government permission to get to that status, but what would it look like for, in order to do that in a private way without government permission? So we're looking at a perpetual purpose trust type structure for that. And part of what I really like about the perpetual purpose trust structure is that basically it takes the company out of the realm of being a commodity and being bought and sold. So when companies grow, a lot of times large financial interests, if the company is really successful, will, invest in that company and then try to make that company even more extractive, because that's, linked to profitability. So with this structure, it really removes the company from being able to be bought and sold. And instead, at that shareholder level, it puts stakeholders. So stakeholders like customers and suppliers, but also like we want to look at, and employees, but also we want to look at having nature as a stakeholder within that perpetual purpose trust structure. And then what you get is that instead of those dividends going to shareholders, and you get the dividends moving back to the stakeholders. All the people that are affected by the company actually are positively influenced by the company, and those rewards go back. And in that model as well, like, it keeps the company focused on the purpose for it existing. So above the board are the trustees, which are legally obligated to keep the company focused on purpose, and then have those dividends flow out to all the stakeholders. So this is the best model I've seen so far around basically taking that innovation that was inspired by Māori leaders, but then how do we do that in a privatized version, and also help companies become less extractive. Yeah, so that's a little bit about a little bit of background in that.
Super, thank you so much. I find this extremely fascinating, and I think it shows how ways in which we can organize within a capitalist system essentially can lead to formats that benefit communities, benefit even nature in that sense. So this is, I think, an excellent example in that sense, and we will come back to this discussion, and would like to maybe ask further if you have any reflections on how difficult is it to implement such an approach to building a company, basically. So this has been an initial insight from Ricky. We're moving forward to Bert Ola. Bert Ola, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for inviting. So it's great to hear this first speaker here. Yeah, so my field has been, you can say, the last 15 years, social capital, which I guess you are familiar with, but for people who are following and don't know, social capital is the relations. And of course, as you see here, the word capital, it's also an idea that it can be a benefit to people in one way or another. So that has been very much of my, both an academic perspective and over the years more and more into practice, how we bring theory and practice about relations into work. Recently, like you said in the introduction, I've been working right now with a new UN center in Norway of bridging cities and communities together in what we call a multi-governance perspective. So my role in that is very much of bringing in this, what we can say, the new economy, all these new buzzwords we hear about, blockchain and crowdsourcing and crowdfunding and new models of participatory engagement and so forth into the more traditional way of doing things in society. For you who know, also I'm from Sweden, but in this case it's Norway, it's our brothers and neighbors. So the Nordic model is maybe a bit unique in a way that we have built a very strong coherence between actors in society. So I'm also very interested in and doing in bringing in other cultures from Bangladesh or Pakistan or Brazil and so forth into what we are doing here. So that's what I'm working on right now. It's quite complex, of course. We have developed a lot of models and it's ongoing, this framework development. We do activities and we build the models because the best model is the one the most updated, and it should work in practice also. That's our way of looking at impact. So for theory to work, it should shown practical implementations. We call it learning society as a framework. It's a metaphor. It has 4 elements in how to map and organize. The first is what we call a charter. The charter is a way of looking at resources from vision down to how we measure values. And when I speak about values, it's a bit in a bigger perspective. And different stakeholders have different way of valuing things. So that's the one part of a learning society. The second part we call a playground. That's the new type of meeting places. And we live in this knowledge economy or post-COVID economy where it's a lot of digital, for example. So how can we, in a serious way, engage people online and also bring knowledge into practice from local to global in both ways, and really learn to build these new arenas. The third element in this learning society we call the journey. And it's basically about the mindset of that this is a process and it's ongoing. And what we do now, for example, in the global summit in 1 hour or 24 hour or the time it's ongoing, what do we do next? For people like me who go and organize a lot of conferences, you get this app that you download the context and you get a lot of cards, and it's like often it's a waste of all the potential resources if you don't follow up and make use of this potential. So the journey is really where you build sort of the relations beyond the events. And the fourth element of this learning society, it's the mindset and the toolbox of the new economy. And it's not the mindset of hammers and nails and like that. This is the knowledge tools. What are the social media platforms you engage? What are the ideation platforms you use? What are the video platforms you use? What are the financing platforms do you use? And since we have a very high speed on this development, we need a mindset of reflecting and shifting these tools to make this work. So this is what we're working on right now. And also we call it the 3L, listen, link, and learn. That's how we behave around these tools or this framework. So trying first to listen into, and when I say listen, it's not to hear what the other person is saying. It's you can listen with your eyes as well. So how do you listen to policies? How do you listen to entrepreneurs? So you get also really learning about the listening qualities. And when you get to know stakeholders and this, then you can start to link resources and be of benefit. And in a reflective way, that's the learning perspective. So these are the frameworks that I'm working on now with many other people around the world. The center is in Trondheim, which is in Trondheim in Norway, which is very much the R&D and University City of Norway. So yeah, I can speak a lot on this observations of, I think where I can contribute most is this interaction with the new and the old. It's not easy in these two worlds, how they come together, and examples of how cities behave as entities and their entrepreneurs and so forth.
Thank you so much, Bertola. Super. This is extremely interesting, and that exactly what you ended on. That's what the question I had in mind. So I wanted to ask if you can elaborate a few more minutes on how this old and new systems, or like old systems and new ideas and new approaches, how do they come together? What is the reaction of communities? We are talking about governance. We are all part of governance, and the way communities work is also part of that. So I think it would be really interesting to hear more about your experience.
Yeah, of course. It's first of all, it's not easy, and it's the traditional institutions, they move quite slow in comparison with the new economy. Like, you start a business or a new idea or form new partnerships among youth or something, which can happen in seconds, more or less. And then to go into a political process in a country here in the north of Europe, which takes maybe to start the questions, to form it into policy, maybe take, and to get something out of it, maybe 3-year process. So how do you blend this new economy with incredible opportunities in the other? So I think one of the keys in this is, from my experience, is we need to be very good in language, in finding and listening to what the more stakeholders we bring to the table, the more important it is to find language that ties the different actors, because it often happens, the academy have their language, and the policies have their language, and the entrepreneurs have their language. And in the long, what often happens in these collaborative projects on city level or regional level is that you end up after some time, when you don't have a budget or something, that they are idiots, so they don't understand us or something. So this is why I also call myself a system entrepreneur. So I'm in the middle of this. So it's one of the competence to develop to become a good listener and to translate between the different stakeholders. To get entrepreneurs to understand that it is a lag in the, if you want to build an enabling system for entrepreneurs in the city, we need also to build something so they understand that it takes some time for the policies to develop, and the opposite. So, and then you deal with expectations, for example, when entrepreneurs want to get things happen quickly. So how do you balance this of long-term policy making with a bit of this eagerness to act quickly as an entrepreneur? So that's one thing we have done now the last months is to build this, we call it like a matrix with 6 dimensions, from so you can find yourself in the system. Are you like an entrepreneur, or are you working with innovation partnerships, or are you working with standards, or are you working with leadership? So you can see yourself where you are in the picture and in what stage in the process. That's one way of like finding yourself in the puzzle and start to expand the circle and collaborative possibilities around you. That's but it's not easy to go from this a bit more slow world to this quick world, which is going very much into flows and high energy.
Thank you so much, Bertola. Indeed, this I think what you've just said can also indicate that the kind of transformation that we see in the world is bringing maybe a different dimension in a certain way, exactly moving from this sort of stillness to the flow of technology, of everything. And currently governance mechanisms are built to cater for societies that move in the old way, while more and more processes become part of this flow brought by technology and other such changes. So indeed, I think this is a point to reflect on. Let's move forward. Thank you so much, Bert Ola. The next speaker is Wiki, please. Wiki, you should turn the microphone on. Excellent, thank you. Again, I didn't. Now, maybe it works.
How are we now?
We can hear you now. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it seems to have a mind. We're talking technology. My technology seems to have a mind of its own. Kia ora no tātou. So my name is Wiki, and I come from Aotearoa, which most of you would know as New Zealand, as Reggie's just said before. I'm been invited to this session because I was involved in a previous session, which was actually about Indigenous perspectives to address or in the battle against climate change and biodiversity. So thank you for inviting me to this session and to bring that voice into into what we're looking at tonight. So I just want to, so my background, before I launch into it, because this enables me to sort of get a feeling for what it is and how I pitch my experiences and what I have to offer in this session. So, so I come from a community back here in Aotearoa where we were one of the last who could still speak our own language and still lived by our customs and traditions. So I was brought up by my native mother and mothers who are Indigenous or tangata whenua, people of the land from Aotearoa, and that is all that I know. The only memory I have of my father is the colour of my skin and my eyes and my hair, as I've said in my last session. So when we talk about these things, I always come from what I know and the views that I have in the being of how I've been raised as tangata whenua, a person of the land. So in the last session, and I'll bring it and I'll tie it into actually, thank you again for inviting me to this. Will tie it into my governance experience because I never really sort of touched on that in the last session. So when I talked in the last session, I talked about intergenerational transmission and about the importance of language and culture, and about the philosophy of what underpins how we actually structure ourselves in a modern society. Excuse me. And so I then sort of talked about my PhD, which I'm on the cusp of finishing, and my PhD is actually called Te Mano Te Aoturua Hei Whakatupu I Te Koru. And what that is the power of the natural world in growing koru economies. So my PhD is basically about challenging the Western economic system and the philosophy of what that is that dominates the world that we live in and the structures that we actually build upon that philosophy. So in my PhD, I move back and I look at this through a lens. My view is through my own lens as a person of the land, as tangata whenua. So coming to this platform here, what I would like to bring to this narrative is actually about the philosophical foundation on which we build these governance models upon, and who do they belong to? And when we keep constructing them, what are we constructing them against? Whose paradigm are we actually building these models within? So, and when I say that, so in my lived experience, policy and government policy, when it has legal weight behind it, especially when you're sort of speaking from an Indigenous perspective, does give us, gives us weight and does give us some capacity and ability to achieve things. It only goes so far. For example, in our own community, as you've said before, and I have worked in my tribal area for a very, very long time before stepping out into the world. For example, in my own whānau family, we used government policy to actually place our native forest to protect it, to put it into a reserve to protect it, so that the other animals and wildlife and the trees could have a safe place to live, to exist in a community where the native forest was being replaced by pine trees and our wetlands being drained, turned into farmlands. So government policy enabled us to be able to do this, to be able to protect what was left of the remnant forest of my community. The governance structures we had to deal with that, to be able to manage that to a large degree, was still compliant with legal, the legal kind of criteria on native lands and how we actually managed those lands. And to this day, that still remains, largely still remains. And so in my experiences, and my background has been as a senior Māori advisor, that's an Indigenous advisor on environmental resource policy planning and strategy. And I also have been at it for most of my life, aside from growing up in the forest myself. And so in that capacity for what I did in a career, we also then started to move into things like co-management of natural resources between local government, which is equal to BERC, eco-municipalities, and local Indigenous or tangata whenua, people of the land. And so these structures were to enable, when we talk about co-management, they then changed the language to what they now call co-governance, so that decisions on natural resources of a particular place would be managed between these two parties, and each would bring their values and views in the management and governance of those resources. That particular approach is quite well used now in this country, and it does have, again, some benefits because it's a rights-based kind of approach to the management and governance of natural resources. From my view, I became dissatisfied. I'm dissatisfied with that. And so when we talk about governance innovation, my view through my lived experiences is that we need to challenge the philosophical foundation on why and how we're building these structures, and to shift the paradigm upon which those structures are built. So in my experience, again, I'll bring it to the discussion. It's all driven by economics, by Western economic model, and also by Westernization. And so, for example, when I talk about what then is another, bringing a new paradigm, a new philosophy based on our tangata whenua views, I talked about in the last session is about te mana o te Aotearoa, which is the power and rights of the natural world, and that is the environmental sovereignty of the world. We are subjects to that environmental sovereignty. It's not it is not a privilege. So when Reggie was talking about a stakeholdership of how do you bring that into a company situation, from my perspective as an environmentalist and conservationalist, it isn't our privilege. It is actually the right of the environment, and we need to be actually performing and living our lives according to that sovereignty. And so in the mana o te Aotearoa, so this philosophical foundation is that we have the privilege of existence from the natural world, and it's a gift, and we don't treat it like a gift. We treat it like a machine, so that we actually dissect and structure ourselves upon this within the natural world to suit the benefits of ourselves as humans. And so from that point, for me, I started to look for another way, another framing of how I could bring that forward into like into our tangatatanga, which is our humanness, and in the process of looking at what I call a poru economies, which is an unfolding and an unfolding and a spiraling that of continuity. So when I say this in terms of governance, there is, for me, if we was to apply this to governance, you know, this includes, it's always unfolding. There is no fixed structure to it. It's fluid, it's organic, it's inclusive, and it's always redefining itself. And so for me, I think that the innovation comes when you challenge what the philosophical foundation is of what we're building upon. And I'll just finish there for now, and just put it there that perhaps when we look at these structures and stuff, you know, if we're looking for something else, we need to be having different types of conversations. Well, I'm bringing that in from my perspective. So, yeah. So, thank you for inviting me in.
Thank you so much, Wiki, for your reflection on these aspects. I think you're completely right in highlighting the importance of this need for a paradigm change in how governance works. And I think this really builds on what Bart Ola was mentioning, this sort of moving from a still world into a world that is in a flow. I think that's exactly is capturing this idea of a need of a more fundamental transformation. And yeah, would have a lot of questions, but I'm also mindful of time and would like to give the word to our last panelist before we also have the chance to engage in further discussion. So Toko, please, you have the floor. Toko, if you can hear us, maybe you are on mute. We still cannot hear you.
She's getting it.
Excellent.
Is that it?
Thank you.
There we go.
Is that okay
yes, now it
okay,
works.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you for inviting me to this discussion. It's really an eye-opener for me. I think what earned me a space in this discussion is the fact that in my country, what I had to do was to look at the interaction of policy, the impact on victims, and also on the society itself. It is a very tenuous intersection. And one of the key driving issues was for me to find a way in which you have a victim-centered approach to legal processes, legislative development, as well as the design of service delivery processes to make sure that we meet the victims and turn them into survivors in that process, so that we don't re-victimize anybody who has been victimized by domestic violence, by sexual abuse. And I think all of you know that my country is dealing with a lot of those kinds of issues. And one had to look at how do we prevent them, how do we respond appropriately to them, and how do we arrive at the accident before it happens. So there was a lot of policy development that had to happen. As you've already said, policy tends to be very static. It doesn't flow. You have to make sure that you introduce demands in the system for it to be able to adapt to the needs of the people, as it was. You see, that in itself calls for a lot of gap analysis, a gap identification and analysis, and to make sure you know the root causes of whatever you are dealing with in terms of the crimes themselves, what makes South Africa such a highly dense community in relation to sexual violence, in relation to domestic violence, crimes against children, crimes against men, so that as you develop the system, it becomes highly responsive to what you're wanting to deal with. The purpose of this is to reflect. And I can tell you that it is not easy to influence policy. But I found it very useful to use innovation to make sure that you develop or you nudge the policies to be developed in order to truly address the issues that you would need to have addressed. One of the difficulties is that governments in their very nature are very averse to fund programs that are intended to innovate, because there isn't proof yet that the system works, and you would want them to fund it so that you can prove the system to work. But it's important for us to bite those little bites to make sure that we demonstrate how the system works. Once the system is proved to work, it becomes easier then to have them develop the policies, develop the legislation, put the infrastructure in place, and then you have a working system. That was one of my biggest achievements, but also my biggest hurdles in the development of the system. The second thing that I found to be very useful in terms of ensuring that there is transformational policies is the development of models. It's important to put models in place. Where you can find the money to develop and design models, design them. then you can make sure that you incubate those models into the system. It's important to know that as you incubate the system, the new system, it is important that you don't suffocate it with a system that doesn't work. For instance, in my case, I had a criminal justice system that was running, but I had to make sure that I introduce new models into that system and change that system systematically to be a different system that becomes victim-centric. So you have to make sure that you don't suffocate your new system by putting it into a system that doesn't work. Can you still hear me? Oh, okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, we talked about the role players here. You have to find a way to make sure that each and every role player finds themselves in the system that you are designing. Because if they don't find themselves, they're not going to be participating. So it has to be rewarding for everybody. Everybody wakes up in the morning wanting to do some good work. So you have to make sure that everybody is spoken for in the system that you're designing. You have to make sure that there's a lot of collaboration in the system. You have to make sure that you identify the right role players. You make sure that they have accountability and commitment at the highest level. And when you have that, you have to make sure that you escalate that commitment to even the policymakers, which meant that I had to talk to ministers and to the deputy president to make sure that they run with the process as their own, so that they can hold the ministers accountable, so that the policy that I'm developing gets implemented. It's not one that is going to be a dot stopper somewhere and gathering dust. So the area of policy impacting on policy impacting on lives on the ground is very important. It is doable. It is not easy, but you have to find ways in which everybody finds that they have a stake in it and therefore a responsibility to make it succeed. That is my experience in all of this. And that is what earned me the ability to succeed in putting in place things that were new completely, like the sexual offenses courts, like Tutuzela care centers, which were victim centers, and changing actually the outlook of the police in how they take statements and present evidence in court. So that's really, in this short space of time, I can say.
Thank you so much, Toko. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. And it is extremely important to see examples of how policy systems have been changed and to see that such change is possible. Now, I think throughout this hour, we have seen, we have heard various things related to how innovation changes our realities and how policy is behind We have heard examples of how policy systems have been transformed. We have heard examples of communities that are functioning on different models that are not compatible with the models that we are having as our mainstream governance or state level governance systems. So we are having obviously multiple types of experiences, and I think something important that comes out of what Toko and Wiki were saying is that there are different ways and different levels where we can have innovation in governance. We can transform how things work, and if we are referring to the things that are recognized by current policies and current governance systems, and we can transform them through being extremely persistent in how we approach institutions, people, communities, everything. So change is possible. However, I think in what Wiki was suggesting, there is another layer, and that layer refers to what are the underpinning values and what is the underpinning structure of our governance mechanism, and what happens if at that level these mechanisms are no longer fit for the community, for how communities work, for the transformation that technology brings, for the challenges that climate change is bringing in front of us. How do we produce change at this macro level or more philosophical level, as Wiki was mentioning? So I think these are all relevant questions, and I'm really happy that we have managed in this hour to paint a diverse set of perspectives related to how governance can be transformed, and also regarding the need for a deeper transformation that is triggered by from two directions, really. One is this important change that is brought by technology. I think Regi was pointing out in his very early words about employees and for me, that is one important aspect to have in mind, that with AI and robotization, basically, we are moving beyond the ability to function on theories that refer to capital and labor, because labor will no longer be at the table. So that brings a quite huge shift in how our economic models, but also theory, should make sense of how economy can work. So and that triggers further needs related to how we decide together on where things should go and how resources should be used. This is what Toko was mentioning. Indeed, governance mechanisms are there to allocate resources. Now, how they do that and to whom these resources are allocated is obviously at the core of why we have the inequalities that we have in the world today, and also at the core of why we have so much challenges with regard to climate and other topics. So change is very much needed. At the same time, I noted down few important words from my perspective: slow, not easy, complex, static. Indeed, this and Toko, I think, has talked has showed us basically how this system is not a very malleable, adaptive one. It's one that needs a lot of persistence and effort. It needs to see success. Now, it needs to be success. It needs to see success on certain topics, but what happens with the topics that are not recognized and that are not allowed to be at the table in order for success to be proved? So again, we need, I think, even more persistence. It's even more difficult and it's even more complex. But at the same time, and I think Bart Ola has really pointed nicely this out, that it is a matter of language, it is a matter of patience, it is a matter of collaboration. It is a matter of language, not only because we speak different languages, but because the different sectors, if you take the language in technology and the language in governance, they're words apart. We use the same terms meaning different things. It's really not easy. We don't have cross-sector experiences that would bring us together in a way where we can understand each other. And this is why the One Pi and what Empowerment Works does and the Global Summit, I think, is extremely important, because it brings us together from various perspectives. And in time, we will be able to build a common language so that we can understand each other. But we do need a lot of common experiences, a lot of common work, a lot of patience with each other, and with striving for impact. I think it is fabulous to have at the global summit a global community of such people who are passionate and driven and engaged in and committed to achieving change in these systems that are so difficult to transform. It is a pleasure now. I would like to pass the word to Melanie. Melanie has been the mind and the heart behind the summit, and she's the one who keeps us all connected and has managed to bring us all together to make the summit happen. And it is really an amazing pleasure to be part of these discussions, Melanie. Congratulations for having managed to bring us all together. And I would like to give you the word now, please. Melanie, please unmute yourself. Sorry.
I was just saying I could listen to you guys all night. It's pretty amazing. And speaking of all of us coming together, I'm just looking at the way we've kind of woven, with the different communities that are out there, and LinkedIn, and so-and-so connected me with Reggie like last year, and we had this incredible connection around the work that you're doing, Reggie. It was so inspiring. And so yeah, so when this topic came up, it was like, oh, we got to have him in. And so it's really amazing how we've in going from a local event, which is really the values that we hold, that change needs to come from the ground up. I mean, this is about what is working, and how do we make that, how do we bring what's working forward for the benefit of all life? And those are the values that I believe that this community is really grounded in. So it's just such an honor. And this is kind of a pivotal year for the Global Summit initiative. It is dedicated to being a home of the movement, home of movements. There are many movements. And Toko, when I listen to you, I hear absolute on-point advice for movement leaders. And you're a reflection of what it takes. 17 years with an unfunded mandate to transform something with great cultural stigma. I mean, up against so many battles. And I think people need to hear your story so much more. We are with this pivotal year, and thank you so much. Stefan, has been actually part of the Global Summit conversation since 2008, when it was really based in policy change. And to do that is, you know, it's no small thing. You know, you kind of have, it's like, where do you go? And the points also that you made, Toko, about not suffocating an innovation by putting it into an old system. And a lot of this change work, it's not scientific. There isn't a model for it. A lot of the metrics that we measure success don't work for the new system that we're creating. And it's a scary place. And so I want to say that my wish really is if we could join hands more as this global summit initiative or movement grows, that we could find ways to support each other more, you know, that we can expand our mentorship and really get out of the NGO ego or who's doing what better, or, you know, sometimes in academia, I think you have that, and certainly with nonprofits, get away from the entity and really become masters of movement building. And I feel like this conversation really embodies that. And just like spirit can be such a unifier, I feel like we're really based in the spirit of nature. That's been a big theme today. And letting Mother Nature and what has sustained life be the guide as far as what's working. That's a big innovation right there. Just to presence it as far as movement building, that is one of the big steps forward this year that we're making, in addition to the Artists in Action concert, right? We need art. We're talking about innovation. What's the most creative thing? It's artists. And I think they've been too left out of governance and change making. And so that's another thing that we could say. Here we go. I'm just gonna, my screen is, so this is, I'm trying to figure out, okay, Artists in Action Unite Worldwide Benefit Concert. We're going to be having more of those videos streaming, and we're still, we're actually just in the middle of our crowdfunding for that. As many of you know, the artists of the world have been amongst the hardest hit by COVID and the economic downfall. And, you know, one of the problems and the reasons we need to change the system so badly is that when the services of certain nonprofits are needed most, they're shackled. And artists, when their creativity is needed most, they are struggling and they're unable to fund their own art. And so this is where we as a society need to like think, are we going to be stewards of a future, or are we going to fall into fear? And so it's really this choice point, right? It's really where all of us as humanity, from the soil to the rising seas, we are the solution, humanity in action, right? All of this, it's a choice. It's mind over matter. And so it's these kind of marathons of innovations, these hackathons. We're calling this edition the Impact Games. So over the last 12 years, we've had every other year, we've had an event. And now we're moving that into an annual series so that we can scale this movement, so that we can actually have a consistent organizational, decentralized, autonomous network that is really scalable and really ensuring that more voices are heard. So with that, you know, it's really back to each of you. That hero, so if I can figure out this, that hero is you. You know, the Olympics was going to be happening in Tokyo. We're here to harness that power, but now we're here to harness your power. And I'm going to hand it over to Jamin Patel, who is an extraordinary, inspiring leader, and it's going to, you know, bring that home. And then we're going to move into our solution cafes, and we're going to be illuminating the solutions from the communities, from the catalysts that have come to us from all over the world, and who we're going to be working with over the next year with our mentor network and with our movement building boot camp this fall. And we've got Toko as part of that. So you can imagine we have just a world-class faculty. And anyway, look forward to seeing you all at the Global Pitch. That's our next big public event after we get through the hackathon and refine the amazing solutions that are being identified tonight. So if you have a solution, you want to contribute to the solutions, go to our Facebook event. You'll see how to join the solution cafes. You can register and just jump on in. All right, thank you. And I'll hand it over to you, Jay. Shine on.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Melanie. Super excited to be here, and thank you all. It's been an amazing few days. Just the artists that have come together for the artists in action who are uniting. Like, wow, it is like some of my favorite artists who are bringing beautiful musical gifts to the world have been gathered. So we really want to honor where we've been so far, the solution cafes that are going on right now. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about is, really bringing to light this idea that I've been toying around with a lot, which is paragons of possibility. And as you might be familiar, a paragon is a model of excellence, right? Somebody who really holds kind of the energetic vibration of something that you see, you're like, oh, wow, that person is really a paragon of something. And when I think about making and the work that I do globally in Malaysia and the Philippines, across the United States, to help change makers be able to make change at scale, because there are problems that exist and we need solutions at the same scale. And so when I think about the scale, I think that one of the key things that comes forth, idea or this notion that what we need are paragons of possibility. People who are out there at the edge, people like those who are gathered here around the summit, who are showing others what is possible, right? We have inherited a world that to some level we have inherited without much critical inquiry. Okay, racism. Okay, gender inequality. Okay, poverty. Okay, war. It's just been this ongoing narrative, and then here comes another billion people, and we're all just like, okay, I guess that's how things are. And all of these problems of the world, they're just part of a narrative that we've really adopted. And when we start changing the narrative, we change the stories that are told. And when the stories that are told that are changed, that's when a culture can actually change. And so when we have these individuals who are showing what's possible, that's when people can start telling these stories. And the more stories that we can share with each other around this is what's going to catalyze the entire culture to change with us. So we're not trying to do all the heavy lifting on our backs through our NGOs, through our nonprofits, through whatever we might be doing, but really organizing around these ideas and narratives and sharing them as much as possible. And now we have tools like social media, et cetera, to do that. And really, if we can all adopt that single notion that if we can show and be a model of excellence of what's possible in the way that we live, in the way that we eat, in the way that we interact with plastic, in the way that we interact with races across gender, et cetera, then we can truly, simply from our existence, show others what's possible and create a change on a massive scale. And one of the things is that with all of these problems that we see, these narratives that we've adopted, they're not always problems. They really are opportunities. And when I think about a lot of the topics that are being tackled here for the Global Summit, it gets me really excited. I kind of take on this attitude of like, all right, team, there's 8 billion of us. We've got some work to do. Let's make this planet what we want it to be, right? And so having those conversations, I think there are conversations that need to happen amongst men, for example, and conversations that need to happen amongst women. And then there are conversations that need to happen between men and women. Same thing with different races, right? So this white people need to be having a discussion. Black people need to be having a discussion. White and Black people need to be having that discussion. And right now, the place of those discussions, those conversations can sometimes be awkward, can sometimes be painful. But when we can take on the skill sets as leaders who see a vision for this world in anything, poverty, plastic, I mean, you know the list of things. But when those groups can come together and have those dialogues, but really show what's possible in those dialogues, and that we are actually backing ourselves into a corner and playing a game in a system where everyone is just losing right now. And we start finding the ways that we can win and we live that and live as a paragon of possibility, then we can actually start seeing massive change occur. Of course, it takes more than conversations. It takes more than the narrative. It takes inspired action. It takes collaboration. But the first step and the simplest step is, if we don't create the massive solution to change the whole planet, is that, it comes back to Gandhi's words that be the change you wish to see in the world. And, I remember when I was in university, they had that in the kind of dining commons. And I looked at that and I said, I don't really get it. What does that mean? How to be the change you want to see in the world? Okay, so, okay, what do and I don't know, I was a young college student, like it didn't really make sense to me, and there it was plastered everywhere. And I think about all the young college students and all the untapped potential we have in the youth of this planet, especially the youth that live in poverty, and the potential that lives in all of those individuals when they can actually grasp what that means to show the world what's possible through your very existence and being that change and being a model of excellence for others, not just living it. I think Gandhi got it halfway. If I could be so audacious to say, is that when you are the change you wish to see in the world, hopefully people will notice you. Hopefully people will see that, and then it may create a bit bigger ripples. And what I'm saying is, no, we got to be the paragons. We got to be the models of excellence to show us possible. We've got to get out there and let people see us, see the way that we're living, see the way that we're interacting, see the way that we're communicating consciously with our words. We're making conscious choices. And when people can see us and we raise each other up and we share what's possible, that is what's going to create the bigger ripples, and we live in a different world than Gandhi today. And we live in a world where we do have tools like social media. We do have ways to get tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of followers, who are influenced by what we put out. And so that's a personal, kind of stake that I have taken, a vow of not holding back anymore and just being out there and really showing what is possible around creating abundance on this planet. Health, wealth, love, joy, pleasure, sustainability, the whole range of everything that exists for humans and the rest of this world ecosystem to really be at its utmost abundance and in alignment with Mother Nature and in sustainability. And so that really is my key message, is that, yes, go out there and be a change maker. Yes, go out there and be the change you want to see in the world. And yes, if you truly want to make a long-term sustainable change at a cultural level, we need to reject this narrative that we have adopted, and we need to create the new narrative and be the story writers of that new narrative by being paragons of possibility. So with that, I just want to thank you all. There's some words I want to share. I'd love to do some interaction. If you have some questions or reflections on that, Mel and I, we can talk back and forth about this forever. But I would just want to share those words and kind of turn that knob just a little bit more than where we are right now, and just own our story and own being those models of excellence, showing the whole world, 8 point however many billion people right now, what's possible.
Yeah, I love it. Bringing it to everyone. Toko, I saw you nodding your head. I'd love to hear if you have.
Yes. I'm getting this. I'm really getting it. Be the change you want to see. It means exactly that. That let's demonstrate what we would want the world to become in what we do ourselves, how we handle ourselves, how we interact with everybody else. I agree with you, Jamie. 100%. And I'm in. Can't wait. Solutions. Enough dialogue about problems. Solutions.
And Melanie, I look at you and just what you have put together here on a global scale didn't need to happen. It didn't need to happen. It could have just been another, August 3rd gone by. It could have just been another day. But you took the action to say, hey, we want to make this happen. You've been doing it for decades, right? And showing what is possible when we all come together and really showing that you are a paragon of possibility, showing us organizationally what's possible, logistically what's possible, idea-wise what's possible, you know, discussion-wise, what is possible, networking-wise, who we can meet and who else exists that is possible, you are holding that point, right? And so are all those who are deciding to get involved in the summit. And so I really want to encourage anyone who's watching this either live or on replay, you know, join a Solution Cafe. Come be part of the conversation to talk about what's possible. Show us what's in your beautiful brain that we may not have thought of. And let's create that dialogue together. You know,
Yes.
we've got the entire hackathon coming up. You know, this event is just kind of beginning, to be honest. And so let's really dive in and create these models.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Jay. Yes, I love it. It's been so incredibly energizing. And just speaking of mind over matter, like I feel when we really commit to something, there's another great quote that when you move with some providence moves too, like when you truly commit to something, the whole universe, it moves for you. And
with you.
right, are you seeing that, Choco? Have you seen that? I mean, I feel like you're,
Yes.
it's yeah, we don't have the luxury to be reasonable right now. We are the generation, the people alive today are the snap of the finger that is going to decide whether we have a humane existence for the next generation. If you have a child, if you're watching this and you chose to give birth, it is your duty. You have to do everything you can. I mean, it is like, you know, that's not just something you go, oh, well, it's going to be okay. Like saying it's like not doing everything you can. It's like, it's complete denial. And so I feel like our movement needs to grow exponentially right now. And we are not going to get there with incremental change. And it's going to be messy. You know, I mean, it's not going to be perfect and we have to get used to it. We're not going to have a new normal. This isn't going to be over. We're continuing to wipe out our species. We're continuing, you know, to go towards all of these issues have been touched on. There was a session that didn't get, technically it didn't get to get posted on YouTube, but we have a volunteer in India that has edited, it's getting online. I just want to name some people right now because this is like our closing wrap up and the phenomenal genius of, I am a servant, first of all, like I'm, you know, one of the least intelligent people probably, you know, like in this group, in this organization. I feel it. And a lot of it is intuition and it's a struggle, you know, because you don't know if you're doing the right thing. There isn't a model before it. It's like constantly searching, what does the moment require? And you just get these little glimpses of that you're on the right track. And some of those are, you know, meeting people like you. And Toko and I met New Year's going into 2016 to 2017. We happened to be put together in Pretoria, Cape Town with a mutual friend going out to New Year's Eve dinner. And it turned out we shared the same birthday, like 12 years apart. So we're like both tigers. Anyway, I won't get into that, but it was this like lifelong friend and I hadn't talked to her in like a year. And she just popped in to my WhatsApp, you know, a few months ago, agreed to join this conversation. You know, Stefan, I hadn't seen for years. He'd been one of the founding visionaries of the Global Summit and designing what would a multi-sector policy system look like, where the stakeholders were actually creating the policies instead of the representative. And that's something that we want to test out with the Global Summit. So if you're like looking for something, you know, like a testing ground, that's what this is. This isn't let's do something and keep doing it. No, this is let's test it, let's share it, let's open source it. So that's what we're going to be doing policies, and that's what we were going to do before we went virtual. And there's been other innovations that have come out. But so Stefan also happened to be in Los Angeles the exact day that I was there when I wasn't even living there anymore. He just happened to be, and we reconnected last summer. It was just like, boom, okay, and now we're here. And there's a young volunteer. She's 14 years old. If you look at the videos on her our YouTube.
Your website.
Living for Life, Wellbeing 360. Her name is Jolene, and she is really passionate about race relations and equality. And she'd already done a documentary on Palestine and how the Palestinians are being treated, you know, in the apartheid or in the occupation. And anyway, so she moderated the panel the other day called Race, Equity, and Humanity with Bishop John Ruskaya. I mean, I'm saying it wrong. And it was like incredible. So, you know, the young leaders, like we need to really look to them. And you can also see Sham and Jana Al-Badour, who are champions in Jordan that have been part of our webinars and part of the conversation yesterday. So yeah, if you're catching this video, I want to invite everyone, you know, check out the other leaders, but let's grow this movement, right? So thank you so much. And I'll just pass it back to you, Stefan. And, you know, if anyone wants to say just one word, I'll just say on purpose. And yeah, let's do this. Thank you.
I'd love to add one thing about what you just said, Melanie, and that is that you said you are the servant, you know, you're not the genius, you're not the smartest, you know, you kind of took the role you did and you really simplified it. But at the heart of it, it's not the social entrepreneur. It's not the founder of the NGO. It's not these individuals working, I mean, they're making impact at their level. But when we're making solutions at the scale of the problems that we have, it's people like you who are working in between all of these people and bringing them together to achieve a certain goal. When you get policymakers, when you get the media, when you get government officials, when you get local leaders, when you get celebrities, when you get researchers, when you get academics, all on the same page to have the dialogue, bring everyone on the bus, direct the bus in the direction that we want to go, and then start moving the bus in that direction. That skill set, that is a systems leader. That is as a systems leader. And we need more people with that skill set out in this world making these impacts, because there are people who are in their silos who are thinking they're doing a great job, but once they see the full opportunity of what's possible, that's when things start to shift, you know? And so what you've done is no small feat. You actually have a very unique space. You know, each of us can be experts in our domain, but when someone like you can come and work across a global system, time zones and everything, and bring these people together, that really is powerful. And I want to honor you for that. I want to honor everyone who doesn't need to be the smartest person in the room, who doesn't need to be the CEO, who doesn't need to be the nonprofit executive, but is willing to be the person who is the glue, who shows people what's possible through their work. That's a true paradigm of possibility. So I just want to honor you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a catalyst.
I concur.
Movement building.
I concur.
That's
Totally.
So we all need to be movement builders right now. We got to keep the movement moving. Yes. Woo.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let's do this.
Do this. All right. Well, we're on a 10-year ride. We're unifying and building a model, and looking to scale it with this blueprint this has been a very potent testing ground in 2020 with this digital shift. We've created a concert. We can take that to the next level. Imagine who we might want to have or invite into that. It's just incredible. I want to give a shout out to Robin Leitman, who jumped on board who introduced us, and just such a gift. He was part of 2014. We were at Standing Rock, which everyone in the world should know about. That was the largest gathering of indigenous tribes in North America in modern history. And Robin, he took on being an artist liaison, and like the thing that happens with volunteer events is that people say they're going to do things, they don't, and it takes a real leader and someone with heart to like positively keep moving forward and make it happen, and just with grace. And so Robin, shout out to you. George, I mean, there's too many people. George Cummings, who stepped in as co-chair of One Ocean, and he's like, we're doing this for the next 10 years. I'm in it. This is it. Jackie Steele, our co-chair of Feminomics, Rika Nakazawa, who has been there for, over the last year since she met me and found out we're going to do this in Tokyo, her hometown. Yeah, just so many amazing people. Mark Thibault, co-chair of this day and board member of Empowerment Works, really on the mission. Ted Schulman, Occupy Wall Street, day one occupier, who has been putting a lot of the program together. Just huge gratitude. Paulina, our chief team builder. Thank you so much. Again, yeah, just too many people to name. Suzanne Bowles, such beautiful work with the collective intelligence movement building that you're doing. Again, thank you, Stefan and Toko. Let's rock the Catalyst Action training. That is what the world needs.
Yes.
It's a $100 deposit, if that, if you can. And it's really, we want to bring you in. We want to work together. We're looking for people who are so committed to creating systemic change, and it's going to repeat every year. So let's do it together. You are the ones we've been waiting for. We are. So I know we could sit here and agree with each other. So I want to give us a little break. Our solution cafes are going to be starting up in about an hour and a half. And so just anyone, you can sign up on Eventbrite. It's free, or make a donation. Certainly go donate to our Artists in Action campaign, and join our solution cafes. And yeah, I'll just hand it back to Stefan or Toko to kind of close out. I'm really excited to be at this point. Like a new beginning is here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melanie. Please, Toko.
Carry on, Stefan.
Okay.
I wanted to also thank Melanie for giving us all the opportunity to have these discussions, to be part of the Global Summit, and to grow basically through meeting each other and having all these discussions, but not only, but rather also taking all these things into our own practices. And yes, for me, it's been amazing to the freedom. I think that is probably the key word for me. That this experience that the Global Summit is bringing to us, to have the possibility together to work on things that individually you're even afraid to think about. So I think this is really a fascinating experience, and I think the being together in discussing, in doing, in acting, in standing up for the things that we believe in is what the Global Summit is offering us, and it's really a really amazing experience to be part of it. So thank you. Toko, please.
Thank you very much, Melanie. You must never say that again, that you are only a servant. In fact, servitude is what we should all be. Servitude is what we all should be focusing on. We need to serve humanity.
Oh, can you speak up?
So it's no small thing that you have done. It's no small thing that you have done. So thank you very much. I would like to say just thank you to everybody. And I hope that we will continue to interact going forward, more often than just once a year.
Thank you, Toko. Wiki, would you like to?
Next venue, Cape Town.
Yes, that's right. Okay.
And happy birthday for tomorrow.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday to both of you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So Melanie, you're on mute, but it would be wonderful if you could be the one to close this discussion, unless, of course, if Jamin and Wiki would also maybe like to add a closing remark. Wiki, please, I see.
Oh, I've just been enjoying sitting here listening to the conversation. Yeah, no, it's really empowering to listen to voices that are looking at, have a view that's different to the views that I hear most of the time. Thank you, Melanie, for inviting me into this conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I've really enjoyed listening to the banter and the comradeship between you all. It's fantastic, and I really look forward to participating more and listening more to what where we're going with this in the future. I totally believe that solidarity is the key. And solidarity, international solidarity amongst us all. Tangata whenua, myself in my little corner of the world, and with others, who are we're all going in the same direction. And so thank you. Yeah. And a te wā, until we meet again.
And nā te wā.
Yeah.
Love that. Oh, I have chills.
Yeah.
I have goosebumps. Thank you.
Chicken skin. Yeah.
Any other closing thoughts? Really? I mean, we are anything, or we can be a nā te wā.
Yeah.
I feel sure to share. I feel called to share this quote, and I don't know how well known it is. I came across it when I was probably 10 years old, and it was something that kind of was a turning point for me and really took my life in the direction of making impact and wanting to inspire others to action and do that. So just wanted to share it. It's by Swami Vivekananda, and it's this quote that says, you have been given life. Set your shoulder to the wheel. As you have come into this world, leave some mark behind. Otherwise, what is the difference between you and the trees themselves? And I just really love that. I've been, ever since hearing that quote, I said, well, what is my mark going to be? What are the marks that I want to leave? My shoulders to the wheel, having given this life. So just wanted to share that with the crew of everyone who's watching.
That's a beautiful one.
So
Melanie, you're on.
Oh, here we go. So yeah, I'll just say, yeah, and as far as like our next big event, we actually have we had a great partner, supporting our Artists in Action concert. That was Hubcast. We have another amazing broadcast partner that is going to be Jason Geil, also from Vancouver, is going to be hosting our pitch night. And it's going to be incredible. And so we're going to have actually Do Me Right from Zimbabwe is going to be coming, and we're going to be bringing some of the Artists in Action energy to our real closing on the 17th. So I know it feels like it's an nā te wā, a very short-term nā te wā, and I want to invite everybody to really hold the energy over this weekend, share all the great videos, and let's let this conversation breathe out and inspire. And one of the things that we are doing with the Global Summit is we have a media series. It's the Voices 365 webinars. And so I want to invite Jay, Toko, Stefan, let's co-curate that. Let's keep that conversation going. I really want to put that invitation out publicly. George has been writing here in the chat. He said, it's impossible to have the proper words to honor everyone who took part in the last 5 days of inspiration. Thank you so much. Yeah, I honor all of you with the courage and the vision, and yeah, just the boldness. It's a gift to be alive. We're all on a sacred mission. So thanks for choosing to bring your energy together here. And I will leave it at that. And nā te wā. And Yeah, just a little gallery view.
Atua.
Thank you. See you on the 17th, and I'll see you all in the Solution Council Solution Cafes. Register, check it out in the event. All the links are there. Join on in. Thank you. Arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you.